Spiritual awakening is a funny old business. Just when you think you've gone as far as it's possible to humanly go, you unlock a new level of consciousness, and that is what I am in the process of doing at the moment. So I wanted to share it with you so that you can see in real time what is going on in this crazy old journey that we're on. So I've entered a stage of awakening called actualization. This is as my team have named it for me, and I've actually been in actualization for quite a long time. I thought I had completed it, but it appears that there is a part 2. So I completed part 1 of actualization. I'm now literally just starting part 2 of actualization. I'm going to talk you through what I know, which is not an enormous amount because I haven't been through it yet myself. But what I do have obviously is downloads from the council and from Source. So they have been talking to me about the process and what to expect. And I also have some bodhisattvas in my community who I coach, who are also starting this process and have also been through part 1. So I do have points of reference outside of my own experience as well. Okay, so what is actualization? And I do mention this in my book, The World is Waking Up, and I also talk about it in my new online course, A Complete Guide to Spiritual Awakening. I'll leave a link to that somewhere near this video in case you need help on your journey. But so actualization is a process whereby, part 1 at least, the compartments of the mind are completely removed, because if you've seen any of my previous content, you should be aware by now that we have the lower mind, which comprises the unconscious, the subconscious. We have the conscious mind, which is the incarnated soul, and then we also have the superconscious mind, which we often refer to as our higher self, and that remains in the higher dimensions. It's not down here in this 3D environment with us. But what we do during the first stage of actualization is we remove all of these compartments. So what that means is the mind becomes one homogeneous space. And the reason for that I was told, is so that we can channel. We can whole body channel, whole mind channel, senior entities up there in the 5th dimension, if we can want to call it that, so that they can speak directly to us down here in this dimension. And this is all connected, of course, to the Global Enlightenment Project and the enormous amount of change that we're trying to effect down here in a very short space of time. So we're really bringing in a lot of heavyweight players who are coming in and working through us and just directing stuff down here in this dimension. So when I went into actualization part 1, where the compartments came down, that made perfect sense to me that we would be creating this channel for members of the council and other beings, so that they can work through us in this dimension. And to be honest, that's what happens to me on a daily basis. I'm continually channeling members of the Council of Light. That's how I get this information to give it to you. The first part of actualization actually was quite interesting, because you feel, it's very weird, I have to be honest, you feel like you've just gone backwards. I really spiraled into a growth dark night. I now know that's what it was, a growth dark night of the soul. Also, the people that I was coaching who were also going through actualization had the same experience. So we all became sort of very lower mind focused, very down, depressed, questioning everything, a bit of anxiety in there, etc. And it's weird because you can't, by the time you've got through ascension, you've kind of programmed most of that out of the system. So it's like, where is this coming from? And of course, what I realized was, because you've taken the walls down between the compartments of the mind, what was unconscious is now conscious. So it's like a huge spotlight has just been put on everything that was tucked away down in those lower reaches. The last little vestiges of sort of the human construct, if you like, the human psyche, have now come up to the surface, and they're sort of floating around in the big open space of your mind that you've now created. So in actualization part 1, you actually have to start going back around the loop. You have to go right back to trauma work. You have to go right back to reprogramming ideas that don't serve you. And I had to go right back and start doing my Littles work all over again. And the Littles protocol, as I teach in my course, is an incredibly effective, super fast process for releasing trauma and limiting ideas from the system, so it can really move you on super quickly. Actualization part 2 involves the swapping out of what my team call the base code for the higher code. Now, my base code, since I started this awakening, so kind of the workhorse of my code, in this avatar, is Persephone. It's a soul called Persephone. I'm a soul shifter, so I've had many souls come through this avatar in my life, but she's kind of the one constant, the kind of the building block of the whole thing. So what happens in actualization part 2 is the team will start swapping out the base code of Persephone and replacing it with the code of my higher self, or one of the council members. What's required for this, my team have asked me to do this, is to sit for 600 hours of Zazen. Now, Zazen is a very specific Buddhist meditation practice that keeps the body upright. So if you've watched my other content, you'll know that I teach, and this is kind of up to ascension, really up to the ascension phase, I teach lying down meditation. And the reason I teach that is because until you get really to the end of higher learning, you have so much activity in the lower mind that unless you're lying down, it's very difficult for you to quieten everything down, because it's requiring you to still keep the body active, and engage with that part of the system. Whereas if you're lying down, you can let all of that float away, and it's much easier for the consciousness to ascend. So that's why I teach the lying down meditation. But once we get into ascension, into actualization, we want to start sitting up when we meditate. We can mix it up a bit. I do both. So now I'm sitting Zazen because of the actualization process that I'm going through. But also if I want to receive messages from my team, if I just want really good dialogue, then I go and do a lying down meditation, because that allows me to access the higher dimensions that much more easily. Anyway, Zazen. So the reason we sit Zazen, the reason we sit upright, is because we are holding our entire system in conscious neutrality. So we're basically trying to gain mastery over this entire avatar. That's what we're doing. What we're also doing at the same time is we're allowing the Kundalini to be active, the Kundalini system. Whereas when we're lying down, it's a signal to the system that should be dormant. So it kind of puts it all a bit to sleep. So this is a really effective way both to complete the Kundalini process, the Kundalini activation process, and also do this kind of swap out code. What the team needs me to do, and will need you to do if you end up going into actualization, is to hold complete neutrality of mind, and that means that they can get in there and they can work on the code. It's very interesting actually, because when I looked at this, I was like, sounds a bit like 40 days and 40 nights, because actually if you sat 40 days and 40 nights, and assuming that you were sleeping for, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours, eating, all the kind of things you have to do to maintain the human avatar a little bit, it does actually equate to around 600 hours over 40 days. So I do wonder if I'm basically going through the same process as Buddha and Jesus and all the rest of these people, which, by the way, is not to say that I am comparing myself to Jesus or the Buddha, although the Buddha was one of Sophia's previous incarnations, so there is continuity there, I guess. Anyway, it's more that it's a feature of the new age that we're in, the age of Aquarius, right? Because back in the day, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, when the original kind of masters were going through this process, this was something that was unattainable for your average person. It just wasn't possible at all. But in this age, the age of Aquarius, it is possible. It is possible for us to attain it. I'm not the only person who is going to go through this process. In fact, there's a lot of people who are going to go through the actualization process. Not everyone on the awakening path, at least not for now. what I've been told is 1 to 2% of awakeners will go through actualization, which is also the same number as we have of bodhisattva souls at the moment, 1 to 2% of the adult awakening population. So it might be that it's all bodhisattvas who actualize, I don't know. It might be that more bodhisattva are going to incarnate and not all of them actualize. It might be that we test actualization down into some other layers of younger souls and we see what happens there before we decide what to do with it, or how far to take it out. But the reason that we limit it is because you can see 600 hours of Zazen, right? Which I'm going to try and do in 6 to 9 months, by the way, I should have said. But it's a massive commitment, and I have people I'm coaching who are also now about to embark on this process as well. They don't need to do 600 hours. They are doing 500 hours. I have an extra 100 hours to do because I am integrated with the Akashic records. This is something that happened to me during my ascension process. I was integrated, so I have extra Zazen to sit to allow more time spent in the code. But the point I was going to make, sorry I'm rambling, but is that I have people I am coaching who are about to sit Zazen but who have families and who work, and they're bodhisattva, super highly evolved, super advanced on the journey, but they still have to deal with 3D life. They can't just go off and sit in a cave for 3 months, or maybe they can, but I think they choose not to, and that's perfectly correct because it's our journey and we can do what we want. So you know, it's very demanding, and it's also, it takes a lot of energy, not just from us, but it takes a lot of energy from our teams to support us through these kinds of processes. So it wouldn't actually work to do this for everyone right now, because if you think about what we're really trying to do, what is the Global Enlightenment Project trying to achieve? The first major milestone, I've mentioned this several times, I hope you guys have picked it up, is to get 1/3 of the adult population in the West, majority USA, UK, the 30%, or 1/3 actually, so 33% of the adult population in the West to 80% integration. So this is really around just over halfway through the awakening process, depending on how far you go. The reason that we do that is because when you reach 80%, you cannot go backwards, because this process is dynamic. So until 80%, and you'll know this if you've hit the spiritual dark night of the soul, for example, and you haven't had anyone guiding you through it, then you can go backwards as well as forwards. So kind of everything sort of seems to stop, and you know, the whole weirdness goes away, and that's because you're declining out of awakening. So if we can get you to 80%, and again, I refer you to my book and my course because both of those will help you do that. If we can get you to 80%, you're stable, you stabilize. It's very difficult to go backwards from 80%. You would have to completely give up all practice, completely reject the journey. So we're just trying to get everyone there, because or 1/3 of people there, because that is the tipping point. Because you see, obviously, as we see, things are not great in this dimension. The algorithm has some challenges. It's we can say it's corrupted, if you like, and we are writing it, we are fixing it, but we're doing it from the inside. We have to come in and incarnate to fix the algorithm, because if you know anything about algorithms, these things just spiral off in all directions, especially our one, because it's so enormously huge. And no one really has a fix on exactly what it's doing at any one time. So the only way we can influence it is to come down here and to manifest and affect change. So if you're going through, I digress slightly, but if you're going through awakening, that's what you're here to do. You are here to affect change. That is the whole reason you have incarnated. So only 1 to 2% at the moment will be going into actualization, because it is so energy heavy. That's so that we can conserve enough energy to help this 1/3 of the adult population get to 80%. That's our first priority. Once we get to there, it may be that what we discover is that actualization is such a beneficial process to certain types of people down here that we roll it out further. So we don't know yet, because we work in agile. We see, we do the next bit, the next bit, the next bit, and then we make decisions as we go. So we will see. But for now, I am committing to sitting 600 hours of Zazen. I have sat 2 hours of Zazen so far. So I only started 2 days ago, so I've managed 2 days for 1 hour. So I'm assuming that I will, with the code being swapped out, I will experience some significant shifts, I guess, in consciousness and also in personality. If you knew me 5, 6, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would know already, I've already changed so much as a human being. It's, you probably wouldn't recognize me. If you were working with me in corporate 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't recognize me today. My teens say that at 20% of the Zazen sit, that's when I'll experience the first significant shift. So I will just keep going until I find out what that shift is. Ultimately, what I'm expecting is to end up somewhere similar to the experience I had while I was in my connection phase. So this is a much earlier stage of awakening before the spiritual dark night of the soul. I had 6 days, I think it was, where I full body channeled a soul called Om. Om is one of the very senior members of the Council of Light, one of the 12 Inner Circle. And it was like wearing augmented reality glasses. It was like when I looked everywhere, I could see all the signs, I could see all the patterns, all the data. Also, I was omniscient, so if I focused in on something, I could basically understand exactly, a situation. I could understand exactly why it was like it was. I could see everything, really. And it was very interesting, but very exhausting, because of course at the time my avatar wasn't habituated to carrying that amount of energy in it. But now, as I've gone much further through the process, this was 4 years ago, I think this happened. So now I've gone much further through the process, I should be able to accommodate a lot more whatever is coming in the mental space. There's just one last thing I really want to say, which is if you suspect that you might have entered actualization, and bearing in mind my journey has gone pretty quickly, and it took me 5 years to get to actualization, pretty much. So if you're in year 2, I can guarantee you're not in actualization. If you're in year 5, 6, 7, whatever, and it all seemed to be going in one direction, now it's gone a bit backwards, it could be that you're in actualization, right? So if that's the case, please contact me, because I am trying to learn more about this process. I'm working with, as I said, a small team who are also going through it. So I do have them as points of reference, but it always helps to have as many as possible so that we can learn how is this experience different for different types of people. For example, I am very mind-based, but you may be exceptionally energy-based. So is this different? What changes for you in the area of consciousness? How does consciousness and the mind adjust? So please contact me if you think you're in actualization, and I will commit to giving you updates on this process as I go through, probably at 120 hours for the next one, just to let you know what I'm experiencing.